I saved my family's business from going under. But when the will finally arrived, my name wasn't on it. That's when I realized I was never meant to be part of their story. So I wrote my own, and I never looked back. I still remember the smell of fresh ink when I signed the contract that saved my family's business. The factory was hanging by a thread. Employees hadn't been paid in weeks, and my father, he was desperate, though he'd never admit it. I was the one who found the investor. I was the one who convinced the banks to hold off. But in the end, the name on the contract wasn't mine. At the New Year's dinner, while everyone toasted to the miraculous recovery, I looked around the table and wondered if anyone remembered what I had done. My brothers laughed too loud. My mother bragged about the new car my father had just bought. And him? He didn't even raise his glass in my direction. That's when it hit me. I had been useful, just not valued. It wasn't the first time I'd felt invisible. I grew up hearing that business is a man's world, that my job was to study, marry well, and stay out of the family company. But I got involved anyway, because I loved it, because it was part of me. I spent nights poring over contracts, calling people I barely knew, just to keep that place from collapsing. And they all acted like it was dumb luck. One day, my father called me into his office. He was holding a white envelope stamped with the seal of a notary. "It's just an update to the will," he said, like it was no big deal. I opened it, confused, and I felt my blood run cold. My name wasn't in a single clause. Not as an heir, not as a shareholder. It was as if I didn't exist. "You've already got your own career, your own life," he said, still avoiding eye contact. I thought this was best. My heart pounded so loudly I barely heard the rest. I wanted to ask him if saving their company hadn't been enough, but his silence screamed louder than any answer. In that moment, I realized, they never saw me as part of the legacy, just as someone they used to patch a hole. I walked out of that office with the envelope still in my hand. Outside, the sound of machines roaring back to life clashed with the emptiness inside me. I had brought that place back to life. And in return, they handed me a piece of paper saying I'd never really been part of it. The pain was so sharp. For a moment, I thought about tearing it up right there. But I didn't. I kept it. Like someone storing ammunition. In the car, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. I was holding back tears. But it wasn't just sadness. It was a heavy, quiet rage. It was the clarity that I would never be truly seen there. And maybe I didn't want to be anymore. For the first time, I considered walking away for good. Cutting the last thread tying me to that family. And with that, starting from scratch. The first thing I did was open a fresh notebook. On the first page I wrote, "If there's no space for me in their empire, then I'll build my own." And I shut it hard. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned, I dreamed, and I swore. If they erased me from their story, I would write one where they never existed. The following Sunday, I went to the family lunch like nothing had happened. It was tradition. Roast beef, forced laughter, and my father sitting at the head of the table, pretending to be the king of an empire he had nearly lost. I sat in my usual spot, between my mom and younger brother, but everything felt out of place, especially me. I was there in body, but not in spirit anymore. While my mom chatted about the kitchen renovation, I kept wondering if she knew, if she had read the will, if she had even asked why my name wasn't there. But she just kept smiling, passing the potatoes, as if I hadn't been written out of the family's story with one signature. Maybe to her, it was normal. Or worse. Maybe she thought it was fair. My older brother talked about stepping into a leadership role at the factory, like it was something he'd earned. I looked at him, and all I could think about was the night I stayed up until 3 a.m., reviewing contracts while he was off on vacation with his girlfriend. He didn't even know the accountant's name, and now they were calling him the next generation of the company. That cut deep, like a knife with no mercy. My father barely said a word to me, just gave me a quick glance, the kind that says, "Don't make a scene," and I didn't. But inside, everything was a scene. I couldn't pretend that table felt like mine anymore. I sat there in silence, chewing slowly, the bitterness of rejection mixing with the salt of the food. And that's when I knew this would be the last family lunch I could stomach. After dessert, I stood up like someone leaving a funeral. I grabbed my things and said, "I have an early flight tomorrow." That was a lie, but no one asked. They just nodded, like my absence was already routine. No one tried to stop me. No one stood up. No one said, "Stay a little longer." Their indifference was the only answer I needed. In the car, the silence was so heavy it felt like it had weight. I turned on the radio just to keep from losing my mind, but even the music couldn't fill that emptiness. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The same woman as always, but with something different in her eyes. Something I didn't have a name for yet. I just felt it. I was saying goodbye, even if I didn't say it out loud. That night, I grabbed a box and started removing everything that tied me to that house. Photos, old letters, memories that once brought warmth, and now only burned. Each item placed in that box was a decision. A break, and even with my heart clenched tight, I kept going. Because deep down, I knew, you can't build a new story while living among ruins. Before going to sleep, I opened my notebook again. I wrote, "Their empire erased me. Mine will welcome those who've been forgotten too." And I closed it again. But this time, with less pain. For the first time, my plan didn't feel like an escape. It felt like purpose. And that changed everything. I started from zero. Literally. No business, no partners, no support. Just a half-baked idea scribbled in a notebook and a fire in my chest that wouldn't go out. I rented a tiny office in an old building with peeling paint and hallways that smelled like mold. But it was mine. For the first time, I had a space where no one could tell me I didn't belong. The first days were deafening in their silence. Even the sound of my keyboard echoed through the room. I cleaned the floors myself, made my own coffee, printed documents, and answered the phone. There was no team, just hope. I wanted to give up more than once. I cried in the bathroom quietly, but I always came back, because unlike them, I understood the weight of every step, and I wasn't giving my strength to anyone who didn't know how to honor it. I called old contacts, networked like crazy, knocked on doors with proposals no one asked for. Most ignored me. Some even laughed. "You left your daddy's company to do what exactly?" they'd say with that condescending smile. But one person believed in me. A woman named Vera, who owned a small chain of shops, gave me my first shot. "You've got that look, like someone who doesn't know how to quit," she said. And I clung to that chance like it was the only piece of wood in a stormy sea. I worked day and night on that first contract. I reviewed every line, obsessed over every detail, because I knew if I failed, they'd all say my father was right to leave me out. But if I succeeded, that would be the first brick of my own castle. And I did. Not only did Vera renew the contract, she referred me to 2 other business owners. For the first time, someone recognized my talent without comparing me to anyone else. With the money from my first payment, I didn't buy new clothes, or a phone, or a car. I bought a real desk, decent chairs, and a banner with the name of my new business, Essentia Consulting. That name wasn't just a name. It was a reminder that what holds me up isn't image, it's purpose. It was my way of saying my worth had nothing to do with the last name I carried. As my business began to breathe on its own, my family kept pretending I didn't exist. No calls, no messages, just silence. But for the first time, it didn't break me. It still stung, yes. But now, I had something they never truly gave me. Autonomy. And in that autonomy, I found a strange kind of peace. Not soft, but real. One night, I drove past the old factory. It was all lit up, banners hanging outside celebrating a year of successful restructuring. I laughed out loud, alone in my car. What a joke. The real restructuring started the day I walked into that boardroom and saved everything. And now, they were celebrating like they'd done it alone. Fine. Let them keep their party. I was building a legacy. On the way home, I wrote another line in my notebook. They celebrate what we built. Alone. I'll build something where no one needs to be erased just to shine. And for the first time, I smiled as I wrote. My empire was still small, but it was mine. And that was already worth more than any inheritance. The phone rang on an ordinary Tuesday. Unknown number. I answered without thinking, still buried in emails. "Sweetheart?" The voice froze me in place. It was my father. I hadn't heard it in months. My entire body locked up for a second. He didn't ask how I was, didn't say sorry. He got straight to the point. "We're going through some rough times. Thought maybe you could help again." And right then, I knew. This wasn't about missing me. It was about needing me. He tried to mask it, of course. Talked about rebuilding, about keeping the family united, about how everyone makes mistakes. But none of those words reached the place where I was still bleeding. Because while he spoke of unity, all I could see was silence. The envelope, the will that erased me, and his face, unmoved, like it had all been normal, like I had deserved it. I took a deep breath. "Now you need me?" I asked, my voice steady. "After cutting me out like I was a stranger?" He hesitated. "It was a mistake. We didn't think you'd go this far." And there it was. The truth slipped out. They only wanted me around because I made it, because I proved I didn't need them. My success now stung more than my absence ever did. I said no. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. "I'm not your magic fix, not anymore." He went quiet, then muttered bitterly, "You've changed." And I replied, "No, I just stopped begging to be seen." I hung up, my hands trembling. Not with regret, but because cutting the final thread, even a rotten one, still hurts. In the days that followed, the messages came, first from my mother, then my brother, all with the same tone. "Don't hold a grudge. You're still family. Let's work this out." But not one of them said, "I'm sorry." Not one acknowledged what they did. What hurt me wasn't just being erased. It was the silence that followed. The indifference. The complete lack of remorse. While they tried to reel me back in with fake warmth, my company hit its first major milestone. I hired 2 women, rented a bigger office. One day, Anna, the cleaning lady in our building, stopped me in the hallway and said, "You treat everyone like a person. I've never seen that before." It broke me, because that's all I ever wanted, to be seen and to see others, not as tools, but as people. I started to realize, not every bond is love. Some are chains, and forgiveness doesn't always come with reconciliation. Sometimes forgiving means moving forward without dragging along the ones who refuse to grow. And I was ready to move. With lightness, with honesty, with strength. For the first time, I didn't need my family to see me. I saw myself. That night, I wrote another line in my notebook. They reach for me when it was convenient. I only want people around who see me even when I'm not saving anyone. And I closed it gently, because there, between contracts, warm tea, and clean silence, I felt at home. A home I finally built for myself. The first time I saw my name in a newspaper article, it was by accident. A client sent me the link with a message. "You deserve this." I clicked on it, half in disbelief, and there it was. Women who are reshaping the corporate world with purpose. Among famous executives and billionaire CEOs, there was me. A photo of me in a navy blazer, a quiet smile, with the caption, "Founder of Essentia Consulting." It stopped me cold. Not because of the recognition itself, but because of what it meant. Years ago, I was invisible, even inside my own home. Now, strangers saw my worth. It made me cry. Not from sadness, but from a sense of restoration. Like someone was finally seeing me without comparison, without the shadow of my family's last name. For the first time, I was just me, and that was enough. But the peace didn't last long. The very next day, my brother showed up at my office. No warning, no invitation. He walked in like someone who'd never had to knock in his life. "You're famous now, huh?" he said, with a half smile that never reached his eyes. I asked him to sit. He refused, pulled a piece of paper from his folder. "Dad, he's not doing well. He wants to see you." The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't respond right away. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to go. Part of me wanted to scream, "Now it's too late." But another part, the one that was still a daughter, even if wounded, trembled. "Why?" I asked. "Is he sorry?" My brother looked down. "He doesn't say much. But I think he is." I couldn't tell if that was true or just another attempt to pull me back in. But it hurt either way. I spent the whole night thinking. I remembered my childhood. The way my dad used to laugh with me when I was little. How he taught me to ride a bike, do math in my head, never settle for less. And then I remembered the last time we spoke. The exclusion, the envelope, the blank stare. It's strange how someone can be so many things at once. Root and thorn, guide and cage. I decided not to go. Not out of pride, but because I realized, even if he was sorry, it wouldn't erase what I went through. I needed to forgive, yes, but I also needed to protect myself. And sometimes, those two things don't walk side by side. So I wrote him a letter. 1 page. I built something beautiful. And even though you took everything from me, I thank you. Because in that emptiness, I found who I really am. I sent the letter through my brother. He read it silently, tucked it away without a word. Before leaving, he looked at me like he wanted to say something, but didn't. And that was okay. Some things we live through without ever fully understanding, without answers. And I was at peace with that, because for the first time, I didn't need their ending to write mine. That night, I wrote the second to last line in my notebook. I'm not the disinherited daughter. I'm the woman who built her name with her own hands. And when I closed it, I could feel the final page approaching. But this time, it wasn't coming with pain. It was coming with freedom. 6 months after the letter, I got the news. My father had passed away. I didn't cry. Not out of anger. Not out of relief. I just felt empty, like someone who's waited a lifetime for an answer, only to realize it's never coming. I sat down on the couch in my living room, now spacious, full of light, alive. The company was doing well. My team was growing. But in that moment, everything stood still. The funeral was quiet. I didn't go, not out of spite, but because I knew my grief didn't belong there. I had buried my father emotionally the day he cut me from the will. My mourning had been different, silent, lonely, and in the end, necessary. Instead of flowers at the grave, I left silence and a quiet prayer. My way. No physical presence, but filled with truth. A few days later, I received a box he'd left behind. Inside was a blue folder, a childhood drawing of mine, with scribbles that read, "Daddy and me at work," and a yellowed piece of paper, handwritten, "I'm sorry. I was weak. You are the best part of me." It was the first time he ever wrote those words. And the last. And somehow, it was enough. Not to justify, but to close the chapter. I read the letter once, then packed everything into a box and took it to the beach, a place where I always felt most connected to myself. I buried it in the sand, close to the water, not as a ritual of pain, but as someone releasing what no longer needed to be carried. And as the wind brushed across my face, I understood. I had finished. Not his story. Mine. I came home and sat at the table with my team. All women, all strong, all with stories like mine. Silenced, underestimated, pushed aside. And in that circle I realized my empire wasn't made of bricks. It was made of healing, of fresh starts, of bridges. I hadn't inherited anything, but I was leaving behind a legacy. The following week, I launched a free mentorship program. I wanted to reach women like me, women who grew up being told they weren't enough, who worked twice as hard to be remembered half the time. It was my way of saying, you don't need anyone's permission to exist. And for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. That night, I opened my old notebook one last time. On the final page, I wrote, "They cut me from the will, but they'll never erase what I built with my hands and my heart. I am the legacy I leave in this world." I closed the notebook gently, not with bitterness, because the resentment had passed. What remained was freedom. And when I turned off the light, I didn't feel alone. I felt whole. For the first time, if you found this story strong, wait until you see the last one. She was treated as invisible for 3 years, but she was the real owner of the company. Click here to watch and don't forget to subscribe. There is a lot of real history yet to be told.